Hello and welcome back to Jess Makes Stuff. We're here on a rainy day in the east of England and today we're talking about how I failed at felting. The first thing to mention today is the jumper that I am wearing. This is the Wear jumper by Gudrun Johnston from the Shetland Trader Book 3. And it is a fantastic jumper with lots of great design elements. It was a very interesting process making it because it has steeked armholes and neck opening, but in the end I got through it. It was a little frightening, I have to admit, but we got through it and created a beautiful jumper as you see here. And this is made in a mix of merino and angora, which makes for a very warm jumper. I can wear it outside without a coat and feel totally fine in freezing weather. This week, I have 3 completed objects, or completed projects rather, because 2 of the completed projects come in pairs. This is the first project, and you will have already seen it if you've watched the previous podcast or my sock knitting videos, which I posted last week and the week before. So I love this stripe on these socks. I haven't done striped socks before. This is the first time I have done a stripe rather than using a self-striping wool. And I really like the way that it turned out. I like that I was able to kind of spread the color apart a little bit with that white stripe so that it feels a little less overwhelming. We have a pair of socks that my husband knitted in this color changing color. This is the mini egg colorway. Very Eastery, very spring and very fun, but it's a lot when that is the whole sock. Even with contrast heels and toes, it does feel like a lot on its own. So I'm very glad that I went with a stripe, kind of spread it out with a bit of white. And I'm very pleased with these. I think these are the tallest socks I've ever made. I think they have the tallest ankle. I do tend to kind of say I want to get the most socks out of the yarn that I can, which means often making a very short ankle on the socks so that I can get 2 pairs of socks out of a single 100-gram skein of sock yarn. So this is the first time that I kind of said, well, it doesn't matter because I'm stretching the yarn anyway by using the white. So I'll be able to get an extra pair of socks out of this yarn without worrying about it. So I did make these much taller. They're not by far the tallest ones I've made, but I've only made one other quite tall pair of socks. And I think they only come to about here. So there's a good 1.5 inch difference in the height of these, which means my ankles will be really warm when I wear them. I'm super excited to actually wear these. The second thing I wanted to show you is actually my work in progress from the last podcast. This was something where I got the yarn on a really good price and immediately got home and started working with it because I love black. Now, I don't know how much you can see this, so I will insert pictures, but it is a V-neck, which you probably can't see at all. It's a V-neck with about half-length sleeves. This was quite the process because I was very much playing yarn chicken the entire way through. This is made with this Rico Essentials Merino DK, and we picked up quite a lot of it from our local yarn shop as she was getting rid of it. And it was an absolute joy to work with. I really enjoyed this yarn. It's 100% superwash wool, and the colors are great. And it also feels really good on the needles. Some yarns are less fun to work with. They might split or they might fall off your needles really easily. This has been so easy to work with. I don't have any complaints about working with the yarn. The only thing that is an issue, and it was just with this black, is that there is a color difference between two of the balls of yarn. And that only became apparent after blocking. It all looked like a nice mellow black. And then when it was washed and blocked, I don't know if you can see this, but there is a line here, and everything above is slightly lighter and below it's slightly darker. It's not a huge difference and it doesn't bother me a lot, but I realize that it's visible and I wouldn't have wanted it to be visible. There is the question of like, how much will other people notice it? Because ultimately it is a very small difference. So I don't think it will be a problem, but that is my only complaint about the yarn. Now this project is one that I drafted the pattern myself. I basically just worked from holding it up to myself and deciding, is this the right amount of stitches? When do I need to start shaping? So I did work across the shoulders at the back and then down to the underarm, and then picked up stitches on both sides to then work the V-neck, and then joined it up in the round, worked down the body. And I did shaped sleeves, which this is the first time I've done that when I've drafted it myself. And actually the Shetland Trader book was really helpful. This jumper that I'm wearing is the first time that I had done shaped sleeves in the round. I have made pieced jumpers where I have made a shaped set-in sleeve before that has that like bell curve shape to the sleeve. So I know how it works, but this was the first time that I had done that in the round, doing short row shaping to get down the sleeve cap. So this was really helpful as a reference for how to create my own pattern that would do a similar kind of sleeve shaping. But I have to say, this that I have made myself and judged for myself what the stitch counts needed to be and what the armhole depth needed to be, this fits incredibly well. Whereas the one that I'm wearing is just not quite right. It's a little bit narrow for me in the shoulder, which is not a big complaint, but I think it's maybe something to take into account with this particular Shetland Trader pattern, because other photos I've seen of people wearing it, it does look as if it's quite narrow on the shoulders. And actually, even when you look at the cover photo, it does, the color work pattern sits quite narrow on her shoulders. I actually widened it to try to get it to come out to where I need it to normally for the best fit. But I didn't get quite the product I wanted on this one, whereas I was able to get exactly the product I wanted, exactly the fit I wanted on the sleeve, particularly with this self-drafted pattern. And actually this project was so successful that I would very much like to make another one immediately using another color of this same yarn. It wouldn't be this red. This red was chosen by my son for a jumper for him, but I picked out a darker red that's a little bit more almost burgundy that I had set aside to do a cabled jumper to recreate one that I had made in my first year of knitting. But this is so good and I love it so much. I want to wear it all the time and I really want one in another color. So I'm just trying to decide whether I will proceed with my initial plans for that darker red or whether I will just make another one of these. I don't know. We'll see. I'll make a decision. It will be fine. But yes, this is 100% a fantastic project and I'm so pleased with how this one turned out. I definitely feel as if I got an A+ in drafting my own pattern as far as this project was concerned. My other finished object for this week is actually a complete failure. We had a run of cold weather a couple weeks ago, and going into that week, I knew that my kids needed mittens and they didn't have enough. We had like a couple pairs of mittens that had survived as a pair of mittens from last year, but we didn't have enough for each of the kids to have a complete pair of mittens. So I knew I needed to make some. And I also knew that I had the correct kind of yarn in stash to make mittens. So when I was thinking about what to make, I knew I wanted to make mittens, as in like not separate fingers, but just a nice round shape with a thumb. And I wanted it to be nice and deep on the wrist. So I looked online and I found a mitten pattern specifically for felted mittens. Felted mittens are not something I think I'd ever really heard of or thought about until my husband made me a pair of mittens a couple of years ago. And they were from a Star Wars pattern book that we found in the library. And they have Darth Maul's face on them. And I love these. They are fantastic. But as you can see, they are felted. So the intention had not been to felt these mittens. The intention had always been to just leave them as they were. But when he finished knitting them, they were massive. So if I put these on now, that is the end of my finger. That is the end of my thumb. It is a perfect fit. But when he knitted them, when they were first finished, this hand portion, the end of the finger portion, came to like here, and the thumb came out to here, and I would have to fold them over and hold the flap in place in order to wear them and keep my hands warm. And we just happened to think about felting, I think partly because of some Arna and Carlos projects. They do quite a lot of felted things, like felted slippers. And we knew that the felting process would shrink whatever it was that got felted. And we also knew that it was kind of unpredictable in how much the item would shrink as well. So that was kind of scary, thinking, well, we don't know if these will be completely unusable if we felt them, but we'll go ahead and try. We'll see how it works. And we did it the Arna and Carlos way, which is simply in the washing machine. You just have to be a bit careful about what wash cycle you choose for felting. But I put them in with some other things in the washing machine, and they felted and actually just shrank to the perfect size. And the other plus about the felted fabric, now that it's been knitted, felted, it's shrunk down, it is water resistant and wind resistant. So I wouldn't say waterproof, but definitely if you get raindrops on this, they don't immediately sink in. They just kind of roll off, which is a great plus for winter mittens. So very pleased with how these turned out, being felted. So I thought, I am just going to use this felted mitten pattern that I was able to find online. I will post a link or something. I will knit those, I will felt them, and then the kids will have some nice waterproof mittens in the event that we actually get some snow. I did get one pair of mittens knitted and felted in time for the cold snap. And my son is actually wearing those at school today, so I don't have them to show you, but I do have pictures. And you can see in the pictures, first of all, the unfelted mitten. You can see the size of it. If you count the squares, those are 1-inch grid squares. You can see the size of that mitten when it was freshly knitted. And then I also took a picture of that mitten after it had been through the washing machine as a pair of mittens, and see how much it shrank by in the felting process. And it turned out perfectly. It is the perfect size for his hand. So that was 2 pairs of mittens that were too large to start with, felted. They felted down to a fantastic size, really successful. So my confidence was high as I went into making another pair of mittens for one of the other kids. Unfortunately, they did not work. And when I say they did not work, there are multiple reasons for that. So I made this second pair of kids' mittens larger than the first one, because the first one, I was trying the largest size on the pattern, and I thought that's probably going to be the right size for my youngest. I'll need to make it larger for the older kids. So I made the first pair in the largest size, and yeah, it was perfect after being felted, perfect for my youngest. So I said, I will make the next pair bigger. I will make them longer so that even with felting, they should go to the correct size for my older child. The felting process shrunk them so much that I don't think any of the 3 kids could get their hands in. And even if they got their hand in, their thumb could not go anywhere because the thumb completely felted shut. It shrank so much more than the other pair, which was made in a different color of the same yarn. I used Wool and the Gang yarn for this. I have not ever used a Wool and the Gang kit or anything, and I've never ordered the yarn myself. I was given a couple of balls of it from somebody who had it left over when she had done a Wool and the Gang kit. And I wasn't overly impressed with the yarn. I looked at it and I thought, this will probably fall apart. This will bobble really quickly. And that kind of made it perfect for doing for a felted project. Because with a felted project, the structure of the yarn isn't that important, because ultimately it's all just going to bind together in a felted fabric. It doesn't look the same as freshly knitted fabric. So it didn't matter that it was kind of low quality yarn, but the point of why I bring this up is that the felting process was so unpredictable. As I said, 2 successful pairs of mittens that had been felted and were great. 1 pair of mittens that shrank way too much and part of it felted closed. So you can get fingers in here, but the thumb hole is like, my fingertip is here. All of this is completely felted shut. Like, yeah. My husband last night said, well, maybe we could get in there with a scalpel and get it open. And I just think, I'm not sure it would even help, because I don't think the kids could fit their hands in here comfortably, because it did just shrink so much. And that's the thing about felting. It is by its nature an unpredictable process. I can't blame the yarn as much as I might like to. I can't blame the pattern, because the pattern is great. If anything, I could blame myself, user error in putting them in the washing machine for felting. Although, again, the other 2 things I've felted have been felted in the washing machine with the same settings and everything, and they came out totally fine and wearable. What can I say? They were a failure. They were a total failure. I don't have a lot of projects that come out completely unusable, but this was absolutely one of them. I'm glad that it was a small project and it wasn't like a huge time sink, but it's disappointing. It's always disappointing when a project doesn't work the way that you want it to. I was actually talking with my husband about this, about the fact that we sometimes expect perfection of ourselves when we're crafting. We expect that, oh, we should be able to make everything be perfect. We should be able to if we just do the pattern exactly as it's written and we can troubleshoot everything on our own and we do everything really carefully, we should be able to make a perfect product. But I don't think that's really the case. I think with any kind of creation process, whatever you're creating, there's going to be the possibility for failure, and there's going to be the possibility of, even if you don't fail completely, of just making something that's not perfect. And that's okay. That's an important part of the learning process, but also just an important part of life. Like with this black, I knitted pretty much a perfect top for myself, and I'm super happy with it, but it isn't perfect because of this difference in the color quality. And that doesn't make it a bad project, and it doesn't make me a bad knitter. It doesn't make the pattern bad. It doesn't make the yarn bad. It doesn't say anything about anyone. It just says to me that sometimes life happens and things aren't perfect, and that's okay. It's okay to have a bit of grace with yourself about the projects that you make. I certainly have needed to have a bit of grace with myself about some of my projects that I've completed. I don't know that anything I've ever knitted is perfect. There is pretty much always something. As much as I might say, oh, I love this is the perfect top for me, or the perfect whatever, it does have, everything I've made has had its faults. And I love that saying about you need to have faults in your work so that the bad energy has a way to escape. And I love that. It's like silly, superstitious, whatever, but it's a fun thing to think about, that the mistakes we make are the way for the bad vibes to escape. I love that. So I do have one other thing to talk about, and I'll be really brief with this, but it is my work in progress for this week. When I finished working on the black V-neck, I immediately wanted to cast on something with the same construction and the same needle size. And because I was dithering about whether to cast on another one in this Rico, DK, Merino, whatever, word soup, I decided that I would cast on the Cloudberry tee. And I made some adjustments to the pattern because I am not knitting it in the suggested yarn weight and needle size. I'm doing a very me thing of saying I'm going to, before I even start the project, sabotage myself by changing everything about the pattern. Except for the little sleeves. I love those sleeves so much. They are why I'm making this. So I have done the back, and I've started going down the front. I've just closed up the neck hole last night. And this is being made in this Rowan cotton cashmere. It's a DK weight yarn. And I don't love this yarn. That's why I have not made a lot of quick progress on this. I cast this on at least 2 weeks ago, and for reference, 2 weeks of work has gotten me this far. I have just a barely visible neck hole there and the top of the back. This entire black thing I knitted in a week because I was so excited about it, and the yarn felt so good. It just flew off my needles. This, on the other hand, 2-3 weeks, and I have very little done on it. And that just comes down to the fact that this is a cotton-based yarn. Cotton splits, and that does mean that you can't just vibe with it. You have to pay attention to it the whole time that you're knitting, which is fine. I just need to actually get the brain power together to sit and concentrate on it and look at it the whole time. But I really enjoy a project that I don't have to look at the entire time that I'm knitting. But it is making a nice fabric. When I feel this stockinette fabric that the cotton cashmere is making, it's very soft. It feels great. So I'm sure it will be great when it's finished. I just have to get there because I did run out of enthusiasm for this particular project once I started working with the yarn. And that's always disappointing, but I know it will be nice when it's done. So I'm just trying to get to the point where I can knit in the round, because once I get past all of the flat knitting and I can knit in the round, at least I'm not having to purl every other row. So that's all from me. I hope you have a great week. Have a great time knitting on your projects, and please let me know in the comments if you have any projects that you have had completely fail. I would love to hear about it. It might help me to feel better about my mittens. Thanks. Bye.